Welcome to Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. In the next half hour, you'll obtain insights and tools to transform your life using the biblical principles found in the 12-step program. We believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience because we all have struggles in life. Struggles with addictions, food, depression, anxiety, and relationships, to name a few. You'll be encouraged to see how others have found a new way of life with hope for the future through life recovery. Your host is Steve Arterburn, founder of New Life Ministries and Women of Faith, author of over 100 books, and teaching pastor at Northview Church in Carmel, Indiana, one of the 20 largest churches in America. Steve is the co-editor of the Life Recovery Bible, the #1 selling recovery Bible. With over 3 million copies sold, this is the Bible given to inmates by Prison Fellowship and the Pew Bible for the Salvation Army. Now here's Steve.
Hi, Steve Arterburn here. Thanks for joining me for Life Recovery Today. We have a great guest I think you're going to like, Phil Dvorak, and there's a whole organization of recovery churches that he's working with, and we'll talk with him right after we talk about one of these 12 laws of life recovery. There are 12. They're right here in this little tiny baby book, as I say, and they really do help us see some of the things that come out of some of the recovery things that we do, the principles that we uphold. But here's this law that I believe to be true, or it wouldn't be called a law. Whenever we serve, it's the law of service, there's going to be reward. Now, wouldn't that be great if we knew what the reward was? Or you could say, here's the reward I want, I'm going to go over here and serve. No, it's just not that superficial. It's just not that easy. Let me read you a verse. Ephesians 4:12 says this: their responsibility is to equip God's people to do His work and build up the church, the body of Christ. So our works that we do, our service, well, if our motive is reward, it's probably not going to work out too well. It'd be like if you gave a tithe expecting God to double your money coming back to you. You'd do better to place a bet in Las Vegas than to give money to the church or to ministry like that. So we serve because we want to serve, because we're being obedient, because we love to serve, and we just get to experience some rewards from serving that a lot of people will never ever experience because they haven't humbled themselves and asked God, where would you like me to serve? You know, essentially, we're God's hands and feet. And you might say, well, if I'm God's hands and feet, it's tough walking, and it's hard for me to hold on to anything. Well, you know what? God has been using broken people since the beginning of time, and He wants to use us. But when we do bring our broken hands and feet to Him, we have a sense of peace, and that's a great reward in and of itself. Every person, I believe, has a purpose and a mission. And whatever you do, you've still got that purpose and mission. And what He wants us to do, if we're in trouble, He wants us to repent, He wants us to get into recovery, and He wants to restore whatever Satan has stolen from us as we have cooperated with Satan. But recovery really is cooperating with God. And that's what we're going to talk about with Phil Dvorak as soon as we come back from this very, very short break. Thanks for joining me today for Life Recovery Today. We'll be back.
Are you going through your struggles alone? Do you want someone to talk to help you through your pain? Do you feel like a failure when you relapse again, telling yourself, next time will be different? Don't walk this path alone anymore. Join a life recovery group today and be a person that your friends and family can be proud of. God created us to be in community, and we believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience. There are life recovery groups all over the country, and if there isn't one in your area, we can help you start one. Life Recovery brings recovery to you, right where you are. You'll take a journey with others to find healing and freedom. Whether you're looking to join a group or start one, New Life Ministries is here for you. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or visit liferecoverytoday.net.
Thanks for coming back for Life Recovery Today. I mentioned our guest today, Phil Dvorak, and Phil, of course, is the founder. He's the president of the Recovery Church Movement. Let's just get right into this. So, Phil, welcome. Thanks for joining us here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my honor.
The president of the American Association of Christian Counselors, it's known as AACC. I've called it from the beginning the All Right Christian Counseling Association. Tim Clinton, he says this, that you're compassionate, insightful, but your approach really does connect the heart in a truly giving manner. And he says you're one of the foremost leaders in addiction, and we know that to be true. Phil, tell us about, to start with, just what is the Recovery Church movement that you founded there?
Well, I founded it kicking and screaming like most good things. God kind of dragged me into this, but there's a gap at times between the recovery communities and the rooms of recovery and the church. And Recovery Church Movement stands in the middle of that gap. It's a bridge between the 12-step fellowships and the local church. And it started about 10 years ago as just a hobby on the side, and now we're in cities across the country. We're in over 20 locations, and we're just growing from there.
So what happens when a church becomes part of that movement?
Absolutely. So it's a church for people in recovery, by people in recovery. And so initially, we find a person of peace in that location, someone who God has some favor on, someone who God is saying, I want to raise up, and who loves the Lord and is in recovery, has some long-term sobriety. And then we just come alongside that person in that church, and we start to resource them and train them, and we start to plant a church.
Well, knowing what I know about the 12 steps and the biblical foundation of all those steps, I mean, it really must be an amazing church where there's a lot of authenticity and a lot of sharing. Do you find that to be the case?
Oh, absolutely. You're never going to find a more honest, speak it how it is. Kind of one of our values is raw, and in a recovery community, then people who are really working a program and in love with Jesus, they've got the grace of Jesus, but at the same time, they're going to speak the truth in love. And so you see discipleship in a life-on-life deep way when you put the 12 steps and you put Jesus at the top. I've never seen any better discipleship tool than the 12 steps.
Awesome. Phil, you didn't do a little research project or a dissertation and decided that, wow, that's really interesting, this recovery thing. You have a little bit of experience in this area. Talk to us about your life before recovery.
Yeah, I grew up in a good home, a typical confused, broken American family. My parents were confused spiritually. My mother was raised Mormon. My father was raised Lutheran, and they were just spiritually confused. And I grew up in that home, not having an intimate relationship with Jesus, not really understanding what that meant. And I also ended up in Daytona Beach during the MTV spring break era, and our family business was concessions on the beach.
Wow.
And so rather quickly, I was pulled into two worlds where God was pulling on my heart. Found my way into a local church, but at the same time, I was in the partying scene. And the partying kind of took over, and depression took over. I can remember times where beyond just passing fleeting thoughts of depression, where I had a plan, I was contemplating suicide, I wanted to die. And slowly over time, drinking took over and became more and more a part of my life. There's a reason I call it liquid courage. I'm an introvert of introverts, and I just could not, just extreme anxiety, social anxiety. And when I drank alcohol initially, it removed some of that anxiety. And then over time, the depression got worse and worse.
Well, there was a book came across my desk, the title something like, I love you, Jesus, but I want to kill myself. And, I think that there are a lot of believers that end up in that place. They don't know what to do. So how did you hit bottom and Where did you go for help?
So I left Daytona and went off to college, and I had great scholarships to public schools, but I wanted to go to a Christian school. I was hoping that I would find people at the Christian school who were a little further along in their faith and could walk alongside and disciple me. It was a genuine thought I had. I thought I was going to die if I went to a party school. But when I showed up at the Christian school, a good school, I found, though, a lot of people who had been sheltered, and now it was their time, and they were finally doing what I had already been doing for so long, and I was off to the races again.
Awesome. And so what happened after you went off to the races?
Well, I started drinking on a regular basis. There was rarely a day that went by where I wasn't drinking. I would start my day off with Kahlua and cream or a White Russian or rather than coffee. And we were a dry campus, so I had water bottles with vodka in them. But I didn't see myself like one of those people. My brother was a alcoholic who led to be a heroin addict on the streets, and he lost everything in his life. And because I still was functioning at a kind of high level, I never at that time saw myself like I'm one of those people. I thought until I was under the bridge, I'm not really an addict or alcoholic.
Right. So what was it that caused you to face the reality about yourself?
Well, I started working. We had to do what was called workship at this school. It was an internship and volunteer hours in ministries. And I worked at a youth ministry, and I actually became the assistant youth director. But I was still drinking, so I was still living in these two worlds. And one morning, I had been out all night drinking, and I showed up to the church, and I was drunk. And the middle school group had been sitting there getting ready for their Bible study that I was supposed to lead. And I walk into the room, and they already had the chairs in a circle. They were ready for me. I sat down, and I began to vomit. And when that started, somewhere along the line, a little girl had put a garbage can between my legs and was pulling my hair back. I had the good 90s long hair at that time. And she was pulling my hair back, and I made eye contact with her, and she was just, tears were running down her face because she knew. And she knew before I knew. Her mother was an alcoholic and in active addiction. And so she had smelled that smell before. She understood what was going on. And in that moment, I quit not drinking. I quit the ministry. I felt I couldn't be a hypocrite, so I was going to quit. And so rather than quit drinking, I quit the ministry. But a group of people said, the youth pastor in particular said, "Philip, that's not going to happen. I've invested too much in you. You have to face me," and walked alongside me. And then I started working a 12-step process. And a few years later, the story even gets even more beautiful. I had a couple years of sobriety, did not see myself still as an addict or an alcoholic, really. I still had some reservations out there, and was preaching for my very first sermon and extremely nervous. And it was in a denomination where the pastors didn't have an issue with having a drink occasionally. And they said, "Philip, you're so nervous. Come on, let's go down to the Thirsty Turtle and let's get you a drink." And so I ordered a rum and Coke. And I broke out in horrible hives all over my body. God gave me a literal physical allergy to alcohol. And when I finished that sermon and got done with it, I walked outside, and there was an AA meeting coming into the upstairs room. And it had been a number of years later from that first experience, but that little girl was going to the AA meeting.
Interesting.
And God was really, really showing me that, you know what, Philip, this isn't going to work. If you're going to be living for me, if you're going to be helping others, you cannot continue to drink.
And so that you took your last drink then, is that right?
Well, no. I started taking, a nurse during that service walked up and gave me a Benadryl and to take the hives away. And so for probably a year, I was taking Benadryl and drinking because I didn't have a problem and did not accept the great gift God gave me with the hives. But it took during that journey, and then again through the 12-step process, for me to really accept that I had a problem and that I could not drink, that it wasn't an option
Now,
for me.
did you get treatment, or did you just do it through 12-step work and meetings?
Yeah, I did not realize that I could have benefited from treatment. At that time, I still had this those people kind of attitude, and it took the journey of the 12 steps for me to realize that I am one of those people. And so it would have been a real difficult intervention type experience at that point for me to be going to treatment.
Well, however you did it,
Absolutely.
We're glad that you did it. And when we come back, I want to talk to you about how your life kind of came back together as you worked those steps, how you got into helping other people, and really glad that you're here. What a fascinating story, and to be in the same AA meeting with that little girl, that's pretty amazing. So we'll take a break. We'll come right back with more of Phil right after this.
It's hard to find a trusted friend when you're in crisis, someone who's been there and understands, but who also has the training and skill to give you practical help. Family, friends, and churches want to help, but often they're not equipped to care for those dealing with problems like addiction and pornography, infidelity, anger, depression. New Life Ministries is here to provide help and hope in life's hardest places. We're not focused on making people feel better. We're focused on helping people do the work that will help them be better. At New Life, we have resources available to help you, like books, DVDs, CDs, workshops, and our network of licensed counselors. If you need help, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE and begin your new life today.
We're back. Phil Dvorak is our guest here. Church recovery movement is what he started, but it all began really with recovery. So Phil, you started going to meetings. What was recovery like in the beginning? It's such a struggle for so many people. What was it like for you?
The hardest part for me was just accepting that I had the problem, accepting that I was an alcoholic. I had some broken theology, honestly, that thought that if I accepted my addiction, that somehow I was losing my salvation. Somehow I wasn't strong enough a believer. And so it was a difficult journey initially, but as I went through the steps and as I began to make amends, as I began to do these inventories and look at myself, the healing and the freedom that took place was truly miraculous.
Don't you think that so many people struggle with that feeling like they're second class or shame, and they never come out of that? You know, they stay in that and they don't do the things that they could do and experience the fulfillment they could experience because of that shame or that one down position.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things that holds people back from truly getting healing and truly getting recovery, is shame, is this false pride. It's I can't possibly admit that I feel that way. That wouldn't be forgiven. But we look at the Gospels and it's a story of deflating our ego over and over and over again of, come on, just wash the feet, come on, it's the next thing down. And to realize that then we can say, oh, we're God's masterpiece made anew in Christ Jesus. But we have to first recognize our brokenness and recognize the pain and the healing that needs to take place.
If someone were to ask me, Phil, what is the most profound recovery lesson you've ever learned? What is the thing that has helped you the most? I would say this. By the way, I'm setting you up to tell me yours, but I would say this quote from Bill W., that acceptance is the answer to all my problems today, right out of the big book. And I have just found that no matter what I'm facing, if I don't at least hit that level of acceptance, then nothing's going to go well. When you look back on your experience in recovery, is there something similar to that stands out for you that's just been a really important concept or principle that'd be good for other people to know about?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you that acceptance is huge, and just accepting the fact that, man, accepting being okay, not being okay, accepting that this is a journey and we don't have to be perfect. That we become perfect through Christ, but we're gonna mess up, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're gonna wrong people, and people are gonna let us down, and we're gonna let them down, and being okay with that allows us to then achieve, allows us to then thrive. But if we don't accept the brokenness of this life, it's very hard to heal and offer healing to others.
Yeah. Now, you've got 5 kids, you're married.
Yep.
And is there anything in your relationship that you found to be helpful, you being in recovery, the way your wife has reacted or responded to that? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, if you go to the rooms, we have little statements, little sayings that have a lot of wisdom to them. And so I have a little saying in my family, choose people over things, and clean your own side of the street. And we say these statements, and you think you're in an AA meeting at times. Mm-hmm. My wife doesn't know where the statements come from a lot of times. But you'll be amazed at how powerful they are. My son does an inventory. I have him actually do an inventory every night. He writes down, because he's having some emotional intelligence issues where he can't read how he affects other people at times. And so every evening he does an inventory, and where have I wronged someone that I need to make right? And they're all principles that come from the rooms of recovery. And honestly, those are some of the strongest spiritual components of our marriage and our parenting. Are some of those resources that we've implemented.
Well, I'm pretty thrilled for is that your 13-year-old that is doing the inventory?
No, it's my 10-year-old.
10-year-old. Well,
yeah.
That your 10-year-old has a father that's actually doing something about this unawareness of how our behavior impacts another person. It's just incredible. I wish I'd had somebody that would help me with anything. So I do think that that's the way we become the transitional generation, is dad gets sick, dad gets in recovery, dad passes those principles on to other people. How have you maintained your relationship with your wife through the recovery process? From what you say, she's not recovering.
Yeah. Well, when we first got married, I was still I was just starting my journey of recovery. I was still drinking, actually, the first couple years of our marriage. And so she saw the bad. And then marriage is hard enough when you don't have addiction mixed into it. But she saw the process of recovery. And so she's been extremely gracious and understands my need to go to meetings, my need to serve others. That when I get a phone call at 3 a.m. and I hop up out of bed and I take the phone call, she's extremely gracious most of the time, and understanding that this is something that helps me and helps our family as well. And so that's been huge, is just her ability to allow me that process.
That's so good. What's the most meaningful thing about being in charge of and starting the church recovery movement?
The most meaningful thing is still the newcomer. It's still the person who just starts this journey, and they just become open-minded and willing. And you see someone who comes in who's an atheist. I think of Crispy. He is a man who came into our Lake Worth, Florida location and was an atheist from an spiritually abusive background. And he says, you guys allowed me to belong before I believed. And he was a part of us. And over time now, he's out there sharing Jesus and sponsoring others. And he's actually becoming one of our servant leaders in the movement. And that's what it's about. When you see people devote their life to Jesus and their life start to be transformed, and then they start helping others.
Well, Phil, that is what it's all about, is helping people belong before they believe. And I really appreciate you sharing all this. And I'll encourage anybody that's watching, If you want information on the church recovery movement, you call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE and we'll get that to you. But Phil, you keep up the good work and we'll see you down the road, maybe in one of those little rooms.
Life recovery isn't just about making the courageous choice to give up an addiction or dependency. It's a journey towards health, wholeness, and becoming your very best you. If you need resources to help you in your journey, we can help. There are many life recovery resources that you can do on your own, with a group, or with your church. We have Bibles, workbooks, and devotionals that you can use to work your recovery right where you are. That's the beauty of life recovery. To learn more or to get the Life Recovery Bible or any other life recovery resource, visit liferecoverytoday.net or call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. 1-800-NEW-LIFE.
Well, I'd love to leave you with a little bit from the 12 gifts of life recovery. You know, a lot of times we enter into just doing something because we don't feel like we've got enough, and then that something becomes a habit, and then that something becomes an addiction. Listen to this. Philippians 4:19 says, "The same God who takes care of me will supply all your needs from His glorious riches, which have been given to us through Jesus Christ." You know, it's just amazing how this gift of abundance comes when we start the recovery process, get back in touch with the Creator of the universe who loves us and who wants to supply us with everything that we need. Now, I have to believe that a lot of folks that get into things that get them addicted, they're really not focused on what they need. I wasn't. I was focused on what I wanted. And what I wanted was a glass of red wine. And then what I wanted was 4 glasses of red wine eventually. And fortunately, before anything ever happened, I knew that tolerance for that alcohol was going to get me in trouble. And so I quit. So rather than have an abundance of wine anymore, I said I've had my share. And now I cannot tell you how abundant my life feels. Life beyond anything I ever expected. And that's what I want for you. And I hope and pray that you'll get a Life Recovery Bible, work those steps, find a group, and if you need help with any of that you'll give us a call at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Life is too short not to be in recovery.
Thanks for joining us for Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. We hope this program has helped you integrate God's truth and wisdom into your recovery journey. This program is brought to you by New Life Ministries, and it's your support that keeps this program on the air. When you contact us for any reason, be sure to let us know that you watch on NRB. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or go to liferecoverytoday.net. Please join us again next week for more Life Recovery Today.